This echoes the family. Stop relying on us, she said, but the number told another story. Here is where it began.
Mom's fork paused midair, a slice of honey-glazed ham trembling. She looked at me, calm, certain, almost rehearsed. "It's time you stopped relying on us. You need to grow up," she said. No laugh, no hint of a joke, just precision. The room went still, forks frozen, eyes pretending not to watch. I'm Sherry, 42, the independent one who secretly pays for everything. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, the safety net no one acknowledges. And somehow I was still the burden. My throat burned, but my hands stayed steady. I folded my napkin once, then again, a ritual of restraint. No defense, no speech, just movement. "Thanks for lunch," I said, reaching for my coat. The door clicked shut behind me like a gavel. They thought I relied on them. I was the one paying the bill. If you've been through this, you're not alone. Peace is possible. Subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story. Holiday lunches in our family were theater, not love. Perfect table settings, cheap wine, conversations loaded like landmines. We didn't gather to connect. We gathered to perform. Bobby played the martyr. Steve, the disappointment. Mom, the director, cueing guilt with every sigh. I played the financier, quietly underwriting the illusion. This year's script began early. When I placed a bottle of Napa Red beside the rolls, Bobby glanced at the label and smirked. "California wine," he muttered. "For lonely women with too much time." No one laughed. They didn't have to. Silence was agreement dressed as politeness. I smiled anyway, poured my glass, tasted bitterness and oak. The swallow burned all the way down. They didn't know I'd paid for the oven cooking that ham. The roof above them. The water in their pipes. Even Bobby's son's tuition, $6,000 and change. I'd become their invisible benefactor, the ghost funding their comfort. And yet they called me dependent. That irony could have killed me if resentment hadn't numbed me first. At home later, the quiet hit like a truth serum. The pine candle still burned, pretending peace. I opened my laptop and stared at the spreadsheet. Every transfer, every forgotten favor, every swallowed insult. Proof that I wasn't crazy, just exhausted. My cursor hovered over their auto-pay utilities. I clicked cancel. No speech, no warning, just correction. A tiny rebellion against years of polite servitude. It didn't feel cruel. It felt accurate. If they wanted independence so badly, I'd finally give it to them. Let them learn the cost of warmth, one unpaid bill at a time. Silence didn't protect me. It only protected their story. I didn't cry that night. I packed. Not for travel, but for clarity. Folding clothes became a ritual, not preparation. Each shirt, each file, each drawer emptied meant proof. Proof that everything in my life was mine alone. No one helped buy it. No one earned a share. It felt like rearranging my soul, drawer by drawer. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. By the second bag, my phone buzzed. Bobby, of course. "What the hell is wrong with you?" His outrage sounded almost rehearsed. "You can't just turn off the utilities. Mason's coming up this weekend." I could hear the anger he thought was authority. "I'm not your landlord, Bobby," I said quietly. "Or your sponsor, or your ATM. He gasped like I'd slapped him. "So this is it? You think you're too good for us?" "No," I said steady. "You've thought that for years." Then I hung up. No drama, no echo. The silence afterward was cleaner than any apology. 2 hours later, I called HR. The woman on the other end was kind. The kind that makes you second-guess your strength. "I'd like to remove Carol and Carl Harper as dependents," I said. She asked twice if I was sure. "Yes," I answered both times. 10 minutes later, the email came through. I signed it before my coffee even cooled. No guilt, no trembling hands, just stillness. The next day, my mother knocked. 3 soft thuds, almost apologetic. She looked smaller somehow, cardigan frayed at the cuffs. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I didn't answer. She nodded, like she already knew. Then she left. No hug, no fight, just absence. After the door closed, I stood in the hallway, listening. My own heartbeat echoed louder than her retreating footsteps. For years I had waited for that sound. Not footsteps leaving, but freedom arriving. I realized how much space guilt had taken in my body, and how quiet it felt when it finally moved out. I made tea, not out of habit but ceremony. A small toast to boundaries finally honored. I stood there, hands still on the doorknob, remembering all the emergencies that had once justified my silence. The $10,000 I gave her after she gambled away the mortgage. The nights I told myself it was love, not manipulation. I was 22 and naive enough to think loyalty could cure addiction. But guilt. Guilt is the leash families use on the strong ones. And I had worn it long enough. The air in my condo felt different now. Not lighter, just honest. For the first time in decades, the only debt left to pay was mine. And it was peace. If love needs secrecy and receipts, it isn't love. 2 mornings later, a letter waited at my door. Certified mail, thick envelope, my mother's handwriting on the front. I knew before opening it that something had shifted again. Inside, a legal petition. Carol M. Harper requesting reversal of the cabin transfer. Reason cited, mental duress and lack of informed consent. I read it twice, then laughed once. Short, sharp, bitter. Not surprise. Recognition. This was exactly who she'd always been. Take, accuse, rewrite, repeat. An hour later, my phone chimed again. Email from Dad. Subject line. Please read. The body was a sermon disguised as parenting. Proverbs about forgiveness. Corinthians about obedience. His favorite line bolded. Honor thy father and mother. He didn't mention the bills, the mortgage, the years I saved them. Just guilt dressed up as scripture. He called it love. I called it manipulation with verses. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I typed one line back. I forgave you. I just didn't forget. No signature, no goodbye. Just truth, plain and clean. When the silence settled, I walked to the bookcase. Bottom shelf. A black binder labeled Family Property, Lake House. Untouched for 3 years. Inside, plastic sleeves, signatures, deeds, and one clause. A reversion clause I'd insisted on when they begged me to gift the cabin. It stated, if ownership is contested or transferred, property reverts to donor immediately. No questions, no arguments, just legal gravity. I'd paid extra to make it bulletproof. Back then, they'd smiled, relieved. Now that same ink would undo their greed. I flipped through the pages, fingers steady, pulse even. Every line reminded me how long I'd been preparing for this. It wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. I had seen the collapse coming years ago. Like a roof sagging inch by inch before the fall. They thought silence meant surrender. It meant study. The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office. Sunlight cut across the mahogany desk, catching the silver in his hair. He adjusted his glasses, scanning the clause. Then that slow smile. The kind lawyers save for slam-dunk cases. You were smart to add this, he said. She has no idea what she's walked into. I nodded once, no satisfaction, just closure. Outside, the city hummed like nothing extraordinary had happened. But inside me, decades of restraint finally exhaled. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like balance returning. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's paperwork signed in silence. The window reflected my face, older but unshaken. For once, I looked like someone who no longer owed anything. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not running, just staying unafraid. I hadn't planned revenge. I'd planned insurance. And now the policy had matured. They brought court papers. I brought a clause they signed. I chose the meeting place carefully. Not a courtroom, not a home. A diner on 5th and Kennedy. Neutral ground with cheap coffee. The same booth we once shared after church years ago. I arrived early, folder in hand, waiting beneath the flickering light. 10 minutes later they came. Mom, Dad, Bobby, and Steve. 4 ghosts wearing winter coats and half-frozen pride. No one ordered. No one spoke. Mom's eyes darted everywhere but mine. Bobby chewed his thumbnail like a nervous kid. I waited a full minute before sliding the folder across. Read it, I said. Inside were copies of the reversion clause. A breakdown of every dollar, every favor, every unpaid debt. At the back, one clean page titled, What I'm No Longer Willing to Do. Steve squinted at a line near the bottom. You paid that much for my rehab? He murmured. I didn't answer. The numbers were confession enough. Mom finally cleared her throat. Why now? She asked. Because, I said, I was the only one holding this family together. And instead of gratitude, you treated me like a burden. Her mouth opened, then shut again. Dad stared at the table as if guilt were etched in wood grain. Bobby broke first. This isn't fair. We never asked you to help. You didn't need to, I said evenly. You counted on it. I scrolled my phone and turned the screen toward them. Transfers, receipts, tuition payments, dates they'd long forgotten. You built your lives on my silence. Mom's mascara trembled. Steve muttered, We thought you liked helping. I did, I said. Until you made it mandatory. The light above us flickered again, and for the first time they looked small. Like children caught rewriting history with trembling pens. You know what broke me? I asked quietly. Thanksgiving 2 years ago, Bobby called me the weird sister, who thinks she's better than everyone. And you all laughed. No one met my eyes. You turned my generosity into a punchline, I continued. You erased me for my kindness. I reached into the folder, pulled out $1 bill, and placed it between the coffee cups. This is your inheritance, I said softly. Everything else? You already spent it. I stood up, gathered my coat, and let the silence hold. No shouting, no tears, just consequence. They had built their comfort on my obedience, and I had finally stopped being obedient. As I walked toward the door, the bell above it chimed like the start of a new hour. Behind me, 4 people sat staring at math they could finally feel. I stopped being their net, and they finally felt the fall. That night, my condo felt like a stranger I finally recognized. The walls didn't echo, they exhaled. No phone calls, no apologies, no explanations to rewrite the past, just the sound of a refrigerator humming like background peace. I poured tea instead of wine. The cup warmed my hands, not my nerves. For the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt earned. I sat at my desk and opened a new document. At the top I typed, "What I owe myself." The cursor blinked like a heartbeat, waiting for permission. First line, peace of mind. Second, freedom to choose who deserves my time. Third, permission to stop apologizing for surviving on my own terms. By noon, the page was full, not of debts, but promises. I printed it and pinned it above my desk. A new kind of contract, one signed only by me. Days passed quietly. The world didn't collapse. The bills came, all mine, all manageable. I walked more, noticed more. The bakery that always smelled like cinnamon. The park bench carved with names of teenagers who believed in forever. Life hadn't changed. I had. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. Sherry? The voice was soft, hesitant. My cousin Anna. I just heard what happened, she said. I'm proud of you. Nobody ever stood up to them before. Her words landed like sunlight on cold glass. Gentle, steady, real. I smiled, truly this time. They hadn't lost money. They hadn't lost a daughter. They'd simply lost access. And I'd gained something better. Sometimes losing them is how you finally find yourself. If you've been through this, you're not alone. Peace is possible. Comment 1 if you've chosen distance. Comment 2 if you've chosen forgiveness. I didn't lose a family. I reclaimed a life.